If you look at the decisions and the choices people make, you can see what they value.
Yes.
And when you look at the decisions and choices organizations make, a leadership team and organization make, you can see what they value. Core values are really like, who are we, that when we need to make a decision, these are our anchors for decision making. So I like to think that with the work that we do, it's really consciously designing the
Mm-hmm.
values. And we say to take them beyond words on a wall. So they are collectively generated as broad as you can in the organization to capture the essence of the organization. Very clearly, the behaviors that we would be doing
Mm-hmm.
to live into those values become very evident to people. We
Mm-hmm.
can see our values in action.
Welcome back to our show, Empower Your Life. I'm your host, Cindy Marie. What makes a leader truly effective in today's complex world? In this episode, we're going to dive into the art of designing values based leadership with our next guest that has transformed organizational cultures for nearly 30 years, working with Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, and educational institutions. She has even co authored a chapter of New York Times bestseller and the visionary founder of Massively Human Leadership. Let's all welcome our next guest, Kathleen Seeley. Kathleen, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Cindy Marie. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this conversation.
Yes, yes. But before that, did I pronounce your last name correctly?
You did.
Awesome. So let's get started, Kathleen. I always love to hear our guests' early challenges or experiences, in your case, that inspired you to create or build this massively human leadership. So, could you share with us your early journey and what really led you to build your own company with values-based approach in leadership?
Mm. Yeah, actually, I started out in healthcare and nonprofits. And I worked with people living with HIV and AIDS. I fundraised for a hospice house. I've worked with children and families. And then I was offered an opportunity to train on a project with a law firm out of Chicago who is doing harassment prevention training for Ford Motor Company across the nation. And
Mm-hmm.
I just, through who I knew, got on the training team. And so I did harassment prevention training for about 2 years
Wow.
in all of the Ford Motor plants. And what came of that was, first of all, I went, financially, I make a lot more money doing this than with a nonprofit. I mean, it was really in the beginning, it was like, oh, this is like okay. Um, and I could volunteer at a nonprofit. And then that's sort of when I decided I should do this on my own, but I had no experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the first thing I recognized what I could make more money. But the other thing I recognized when teaching harassment prevention, I was telling people how to behave, and
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't well received. Like people were, there was a lot of resistance, and I understood it.
Yeah.
And I had this realization that if we could connect people from the inside out and find what we have in common first, and
Mm-hmm.
then we can navigate our differences, there might be something in that. And that sort of led me on this path or this journey of, um, I always kept a part time job with my nonprofits. But as I built up my consulting practice,
Mm-hmm.
I became more focused on, first it was conflict resolution, and then it was leadership development. And then I would say like 15 years ago, maybe. I mean, time flies. I decided to see uh, how all the courses I taught, I would read a book, and
Mm-hmm.
if I liked it, I would turn it into a workshop. That's all my early learning.
Oh,
And then
wow.
I thought, do I know what I'm talking about? So there was a whole 2 years where I invested a small fortune in my own education. I got a master's degree, and then I got another advanced degree in values based leadership. But my first master's was in just straight up leadership, and then I'm more focused in values based leadership, which opened my world to values and
Mm-hmm.
how they matter. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I was also taking a number of personal transformation courses, which is
Mm-hmm.
where I met Jack Canfield. And then I was training and designing programs for him for 13 years, worked with Janet Atwood, just a number of people in sort of that industry. And I saw this connection between the personal transformation world and organizational culture.
Yeah.
And also, even before that, I took this workshop that completely changed how I saw the world. And it was called The Human Element. And that was 20 plus years ago. And
Wow.
it didn't change, I didn't change my behavior right away, but it opened my mind to this concept of personal responsibility and that the life I'm living, I created, and therefore I can change it. So it was all these kinds of things that came together. And then people started asking me, hey, can you work with my team to do some conflict resolution? Can you do this? Can you do that? And I became more and more, I got more and more business just creating programs that people wanted. But then I started to see how, culture matters, strategy matters, but what connects that is the leadership. And your strategy will never outperform your leadership. So that's what got me really focused in on leadership development. And also at the same time, values-based leadership development, because values connect us.
Yes.
Our beliefs divide us. So that was, that's a short version. And then I used to be called the Seeley Group Consulting. And I came across this sort of idea of, we need to be more human, and we actually need to be more massively human. And that became the name of the company, Massively Human Leadership.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I'll say, because it's, there's so many tentacles, but the other piece of our business is we help coaches and trainers build their coaching and training business, because I certify a number of people in the Barrett values tools and in Jack's tools and our own tools. So it's kind of like this whole everything I do now, I connect to values. So that's high level journey. Just recently, like I love learning, I love coaching, and I've sort of really advanced my coaching skills by finally getting my ICF credential. I have a certificate in narrative coaching, and now I'm in a practitioner course for systemic team coaching. So it's really coaching with values and leadership and culture. It's just my passion. So that's my journey. 3 kids, a dog, and a crazy happy life in many ways.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's your signature, right? Crazy happy life or something.
No, mine is life is good. Yeah.
Life is good.
Yeah, life is good.
Yeah. And I must say, if people new hearing Massively Human Leadership, I love your logo.
Oh,
it
yeah.
means a lot. And how you come up with that logo, I think, I don't know, maybe just like, oh, I think this one and I did that one. Then it's like, that's it. Or was it more sort of brainstorming with a lot of creativity with a lot of your team and then came up with that? Because I really love it. That's why I wanted to.
So for those of you who don't know the logo, it's a thumbprint turned with the globe in it turned on its side. And how I came up with that is I did a Fiverr a long time ago. Hey, create a logo. And someone came up with a thumbprint, a fingerprint, because values are like our fingerprint, so to speak. And then I had the idea of, well, we really need to turn cultures on their side. We need to change the way we do things in organizations. So I said, hey, can you fit a world map sideways on a thumbprint? So that's how it came about.
Wow.
And I love it. It feels, even today, I think I really landed on the logo maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, but I love it. It feels so true for me.
It's beautiful. So kudos to that, because
I'm glad you like it.
It just makes sense. Like, yes, that's it. And then you mentioned about fingerprint and culture, and that connects us. Wonderful. And now we are talking about the importance of core values in leadership for business and life. Now, you mentioned transformation. So in personal development and growing your businesses, core values always been part of discussion. But my question to you, Kathleen, and correct me if I'm wrong, why do you think that it's still not easily implemented Is it correct to say that? If so, why do you think so?
So I think I might take a windy road here, but I think every organization is values driven
Mm,
because our values are representative of our needs, which show up in our motivations. So, um, and so we're just not conscious of it.
okay.
If you look at the decisions and the choices people make, you can see what they value.
Yes.
And when you look at the decisions and choices organizations make, a leadership team and organization make, you can see what they value.
Mm-hmm.
So, core values are really like, who are we? That when we need to make a decision, these are our anchors for decision making.
Yeah.
And we can see, like, oftentimes values are up on the wall with their mission, their vision, their values. And it's just lip service because there's no real intentional design behind it necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Really, who are we?
Yeah.
And when it comes down to it, how are we going to guide our decision making? So I like to think that with the work that we do, and lots of people do great work in this value space and corporate and culture and all that leadership, like there's so many of us who do great work, but it's really consciously designing the values. And we say to take them beyond words on a wall. So they are collectively generated as broad as you can in the organization to capture the essence of the organization. And then very clearly the behaviors that we would be doing to live into those values become very evident to people. We can see our values in action. So I think your question was around, why is it so hard, or is it hard? I think if we make it more explicit and conscious, it makes more sense to people because we can understand ourselves more if we understand our motivations and our needs, which really are driven, our values really kind of help us move towards satisfying our needs. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely. I mean, it's something that not so unusual for me to hear about having the vision, mission, and so on and so forth that just put there, but not really practicing. And this is why a lot of people, especially the employees, starting to question, what are we really doing? And the next question, actually, I feel that might be relate to this particular line when I was doing this homework, doing some research at your website, Massively Human Leadership. I came across with this line, the workplace is out of alignment. Would that be something related to what we're just discussing? And if not, what do you exactly mean by that?
So I think that, yes, it's related. We're out of alignment because we haven't really clarified, me as an individual person in the company, what are my values? And what are our values collectively? And how can I relate myself? How can I have a relationship with who we are?
Yeah.
And if we aren't clear on our own personal values and the values of the company, we feel like we're out of alignment because we never consciously said, why am I doing this? And as an employee, I need to see myself connected to the vision or the purpose of the organization, right? And if I don't see myself as connected, I become disconnected. And that's where the lack of alignment is. And, we all come to the workplace with our personal values, and our values underpin everything that we do.
Yes.
Everything. And we come with our own set of values. And it doesn't mean we have to drop our values to be part of an organization, but we have to understand how we can connect to the purpose of the organization and find something in common. And so often we don't spend time doing that. We do, even in relationships, marriages, or we haven't really had a conversation about what really do you value and how can we find a synergy, an energetic connection, so that when things get tough, I know why I'm sticking to it. Yeah, so that's what I mean by out of alignment. We haven't really had the conversation. We haven't checked in. Are these values true for us today?
Yeah.
And what is going to pull us forward into our next possibility? So
yeah. And you mentioned when you are about to work with an organization that you also making a conscious decision, a reflection whether you can connect with them or not. And so I'm super curious, what are your core values personally and with your with this company or consulting practice or business that you have?
So I would say my personal core values are learning, lifelong learning, um, fairness,
Mm-hmm.
compassion. Those would be my core values. And one that pops up a lot when I get triggered is safety. So it's
Ah.
really interesting. Safety and fairness are not um, on the top of my mind, but when they're bumped up against, they show up. So I've really gotten to know myself that way. I've carried those my whole life. The way they manifest and my beliefs around them have evolved. So personally, those would be my sort of operating values. I've always been a lifelong learner. I'm super curious, and compassion would be a more of an aspirational value.
Mm-hmm.
And I can sometimes not be compassionate. So it's like, what would I do in this situation if I was really living my value of compassion? So it gives me direction. So those are
Mm.
my personal values. And I would say in our organization, um, learning is a core value for our team, but
Mm-hmm.
also excellence,
Mm-hmm.
and inclusion, strategic alliances, and we created our own value called Create Ovation
Oh,
because we
nice.
like the word creativity and we like the word innovation. And we kind
Yes.
of didn't want to have too many values to focus on. So our word is creativation because we love creativity and we're really good at innovating because we can solve problems with for our clients in many ways, like meaning help our clients achieve what they want to achieve in creative and innovative ways. So that would be the essence of our company. We have 3 generations working in our company.
Oh, yes, yes, you
So
mentioned.
there's a lot of um, um, diversity in opinion, and it's delicious and beautiful, and it's really key to our survival.
Yeah, I am happy you mentioned that because I think when you have family members
Mhm.
within the company, I think there will be a lot of challenges, but in a beautiful way. And I think the best way to really connect everyone is how we communicate. I'm a big believer with that. I mean, one of the example you mentioned about relationship, right? And that's always stuck with me, that why am I sticking with this relationship? What are the
Mhm.
core values and how can I communicate or express that to my husband? So not only there's no judgmental or criticism, but really focusing on we are here together as a
Mhm.
partner because we want the best for individual as a team as well as a partner. And I think that's also the communication that kicks in organization to keep moving forward, to have that creativity and innovation, especially if you have a family members. Now, you mentioned earlier also feeling safe.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the next question that I want to ask you, something that really speaks so much for me about authenticity, because this is something that I express. I feel like this is my calling to show to people that being authentic is safe. And so, my question is, how do you think that talking about or discussing about core values can create more openness and authenticity in the workplace? Do you think that it's easy to make it happen, or it's
Mhm.
still challenging to make it happen, where people start to feel safe enough to be their true selves?
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that?
So um, it's shockingly simple to facilitate dialogue around values. It really, they go deep quickly and
Mm-hmm.
it seems like a simple concept to people, but it really connects people. So a couple of things. When we talk about psychological safety in an organization,
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing. And having open communication is sort of developmental from having that foundational safety. And I find that if we can have any intervention I do with an individual I'm coaching or or a team or in any context, we start with a lot of self-awareness work, like mindset. How do you see the world? We talk about the nervous system and how we have to learn to understand when we're triggered and how to regulate ourselves, and that it's really, we're triggered because we have fear. What are we afraid of? And to have that self-awareness. So there's a little bit of foundational work for people to understand themselves a little bit more, but we learn that together collectively. So we get to know ourselves and each other in this way that suddenly I feel closer to you. But values conversations, they allow us to say, you know, what are your, I have the exercise, you know, identify 3 values from this list that are important to you today. And I have the team choose 3 values. And then I say, they answer a question, what are your beliefs around it? And what does it look like when you're living it? And we just start that dialogue with people. And we're not even talking about organizational values. We're just talking about what we value. And collectively, people will say, oh, I have honesty, you have integrity. They sound the same. Or, oh, honesty is a value of mine, but it means something different to you than me. Yeah. So when we have those conversations and people share, we're able to see how we're able to locate ourselves in the value, and we're able to see different perspectives. So it broadens what I call our dimensionality and our experience or our understanding of a value. So we can say, oh, it's not just my way. And those conversations, we can say, okay, now organizationally, what are our values? We do more sort of high-tech assessments that they come up with what their organization values are, but the conversation is the same. Yes. You know, most organizations pick respect and accountability. Yes. Well, I might come in with the personal value of respect, and it might mean this, but organizationally, we have to come to what I call it's not me, it's _𝗪𝗍𝗶. I stole from him. But it's called intersubjective truth. Okay, we have objective truth, we can see it. Yeah. Then we have subjective truth, which is my opinion about that truth. But intersubjective truth is where teams then begin to agree on what that means to us. So I don't have to abandon my value of respect, but what's it going to mean to us in the workplace? And those conversations really create safety. You can't just jump in and say, okay, everybody, we're going to have this. It's safe to share how you feel. It's building the gradient, building the trust, taking risks. And at any time I work with a team, I talk to the leader ahead of time and say, I'm going to push you. You're going to go first. You're going to be vulnerable. And because everyone's watching you. And the more risk you take, the more authentic you are, the more transparent you are, and the more imperfect you are. You give people permission to show up as they are. And you can just feel it when the team clicks. Sometimes it takes a little longer with some, but it's just like creating a safe step-by-step process of having that dialogue. But values conversations are essential because we can go deep really quickly.
And do you have like a recent situation whereby this particular situation, it's been a challenge? Let's say you are helping a leader and he's just giving, I don't have to listen to my team, but I value our core values. And then he or she is giving you this sort of feedback but they're not listening to me. They're constantly doing something else. And because why I'm asking this is because sometimes, of course, it two takes to tango, right? The employee and the leader as well. But most of the cases is also the leader have the responsibility to create that safe space. But if they're constantly giving themselves excuses that, for example, that's just the way I am, it's been working that way. So how would you, and I'm sure you have done that, but I think it's very important to have this conversation in this episode. How can we let the leader to listen carefully? Because I believe most leaders want to make a great impact. So how would you handle that? So, they can slowly give themselves permission that there's a way to change and shift that. So we can make a positive change as well within our organization.
Yeah. So that's not unusual. Usually the person that hires me is saying fix them, but it's usually the person that hires me that some of the fixing needs to start there. But it's not necessarily that they're broken. So fixing the opposite would, it would imply something's broken, but it's really increasing their awareness of how they impact people.
Yes.
And so there's sort of 3 tracks I take, depending on what the company is willing to commit to. But
Mm,
I like to have the team together to learn about themselves together to begin to create that psychological safety in the room. I
yeah.
like to coach people one-on-one so I can help them individually and give them feedback on how I experience them in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And I also do a type of team coaching where we create spaces where people can give that feedback
Yes.
but it doesn't happen overnight. The person that can be the most obstructive or destructive um, can often be the biggest breakthrough for the team. If I
Mm-hmm.
can find a way to have them see themselves and how their behavior is impacting the team.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Mm-hmm.
best way to do that is have the team talk about it.
Yes.
Sometimes they need a little bit more one-on-one to
Yes.
say, like, for example, I'm working with a group right now where there's a lot of tension on the team, a lot, a
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
lot. And I've been trying to have a one-on-one conversation with one person who doesn't really want to. And
Wow.
I use my value of compassion. And
Yes.
my value of compassion is such that there's a fear. So finding a way, it's my job to find a way to make that person feel safe to have a conversation with me. But the
Yeah.
conversation looks something like, can you tell me what you were hoping to gain from this thing that happened? What were you hoping to get from
Mm-hmm.
that? And what do you think happened? Like, to just shine a little light.
Yeah.
In a gentle way. That's a current team. But in the past, I've had people that have resisted, and then finally we get together individually. And I'm just kind about it because I know what it's like to be afraid. I know what
Yeah.
it's like to feel like you're being revealed as a fraud. And I don't know their experience, but I understand that experience. So,
Yes.
how can we create a place where people can feel safe in being vulnerable, safe in being authentic,
Mm.
receive feedback, and give feedback? But it's a process.
It
If
is.
someone's just hiring me to come in for a day, I say, well, we'll have a great time. You'll learn a lot about values. You'll feel closer at the end of the day for sure. 100% I can do a great one day and nothing will change, but that's okay, because it changes in people's thinking. They see themselves differently no matter what you do. Everything you do causes something to move. Everything causes something. But then if you're willing to make a longer term commitment, we can really move the team into this um, in a space where they can really become more interdependent and leverage the collective intelligence of the team.
Yeah.
But it takes time.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to time, uh, people would have different interpretation. How do they take care of it?
Mhm.
And you mentioned about this interdependence and also helping one another. And my next question to you, Kathleen, is that based on your experience in a world where I think you would see it, comparison from one to another, whether we're conscious or subconscious, and that perhaps could be also the reasons why many people not open to communicate because there's certain fear of comparison, whether it's in personal or in our organization. And so my question to you, what do you think the most important steps for individuals or even, let's say, entrepreneurs to reflect on, specifically on this topic about comparison, so they can refine their values? Is there something related to self-awareness? So what are the most important steps that you could share with us?
Like, just to get clear on the question, like, how how to help people navigate comparing themselves to others, or I'm not quite understanding the question.
Yeah,
um,
so how can we, refine our values so we can handle more the comparison life that we're living? It's a
mhm.
constant thing that are happening that I think could also cause people blocked to move forward. So yeah.
Yeah. So I think I think comparison is a killer,
Mm.
but we do it anyway.
Yeah.
And so me personally, and a couple of things are coming to my mind with this, because I think about imposter syndrome.
Mm.
And I don't think I think imposter syndrome is blown up. Uh, and I get, if it's pathological, you need help, and it's, you feel like such a fraud, you're curled up in the corner, you can't cope with the world. That's one thing. You need help. But
Yeah.
imposter syndrome is exciting, because to
Mm.
me, it means you're moving into a place that you've never gone before. You're getting out of your comfort zone, out of your
Mm.
familiar zone. How could you know something? So that's how I frame it. And I teach a piece on imposter syndrome just from that perspective. I mean, I have no idea if that makes any sense to anyone, but to me it does. So I share that idea. You don't have to believe it. But it can give us courage to not know as much as someone else. And
Mhm.
also the grace to allow others to not know as much as us in a certain area. So we're complex beings. No one is one thing. And if you are comparing yourself directly, there's no straight line to
Mhm.
compare yourself to somebody else, because there's so much, our contexts are so different. We come to the
Yes.
table with different things. So recognizing the diversity in our lives, I think, can reduce the comparison. I don't really teach on that specifically. So that's a super interesting question. You're going to have me spinning on it. But when we talk about, like, use values as a tool for dialogue, what it does is it allows us to see, oh, you see the world slightly different than me.
Yeah.
Oh, you're in a different place than I am,
Mhm.
developmentally in your life. Like, people who are just starting in the workplace see the world very differently than people who are at the peak of their career or retiring.
Yes.
So how can I sort of broaden my tolerance for differences from
Yeah.
me, rather than saying, oh, we're different, you're better than me, or I'm better than you? What if it just was? Maybe that's utopian. I don't know. But I think that the dialogue around values allows us to get to know each other and ourselves deeper. And this is off topic, but I'm going to go here. So oftentimes what people ask me is, do our values change over our lives? And maybe your core values, I always hang on to safety and fairness always pops up, but different things have popped up through my life.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they always show up. But my relationship to those values, my belief about what those values mean, has evolved.
Mhm.
So when I can recognize that, like, for example, safety for me was from a traumatic event in my life, my childhood,
Yes.
that I
Yes.
would, like, go after people first. I'd be aggressive, I'd be right, I'd have more knowledge. So it was to keep me safe.
Yes.
But as I've grown and matured and got more experience, I'm really passionate about having you feel safe in my
Mm.
presence, so we can learn and grow together. So you see, same value, but different perspective. Same with fairness. It was like, that's not fair to me, but I've broadened my view to what's fair to us. So if we can have those conversations, I can see, oh, we have different motivations, we have different needs. It
Yeah.
doesn't make you better or worse than me. How can we tap into this diversity to create a multi-dimensional workplace or
Yeah.
relationship, or that allows all these different perspectives in to tap into our better selves, where we
Yeah.
have 1 + 1 = 5, not 2. Does that, I don't even know if I even hit on an answer to your question, because it's in.
No, definitely. No, no,
Okay.
no. That makes huge sense because it's funny you mentioned about how we shift our values, because while I was listening to your safety and fairness, one of the things that I recognized back then, belongingness,
Mm.
because of the trauma that I have experienced.
Mhm.
But then over time, I recognize now I want people, like what you said, I want other people to feel safe. And
Mhm.
so I actually create that as well, that I want people to feel belong. It's no longer myself, but still the value is there. And speaking about comparison, I have a huge sort of disease, if we can call that, back then, But I think it's because of the experience that you allow yourself to go through with, and then getting out of being a victim to
Yes.
a victor, that I
Yes.
own my life now. And
Mhm.
so I'm a big believer that we are all here to express our individual uniqueness from
Mhm.
skills, expertise, talents, and gifts, that nobody ever can, steal that from you, because your way of taking experience is different than me to you to us, everybody. So that's why for me, comparison, really, it's a thief of joy, thief of success, whatever.
Mhm.
But that requires a lot of, when we call the process of understanding ourselves.
Mhm.
And I think understanding ourselves from pleasant to unpleasant requires a lot of time, a lot of work. And I think when we really committedly saying to ourselves that this is the moment I'm going to take responsibility of my life. And yes, the comparison will always be there, but
Mhm.
it's just like the fear. The fear will always be there, but it's just on the side of your driver's seat, no longer in the front seat, that taking
Yeah.
over the direction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And it makes me think about how all the behaviors we have, whether they are supportive of our growth or they get in the way, we do things to keep ourselves safe. And it worked at some point in our lives. So I don't, when people say, I don't want to be that anymore, or I don't want to respond like that anymore, I think that's an impossible task to get rid of something. It's like that kept you safe. Love it, acknowledge it, but put it at the back of the bus. It doesn't need to drive anymore. It's
Yes.
it's part of you. It's this one. It's an identity that came forward that kept you safe in that moment. And what part of you needs to step forward for this next moment? But it's not about getting rid of parts of yourself, because that's you. And
Yes.
and I think that that gives people permission to be where they are, and also to allow others to be where they are. um
Yes.
because, like, if you compare yourself, like, the word success makes me crazy. It's like success on your own terms. I always add
Yes.
that to it, because it's like, I don't, what I thought was success 20 years ago is different than today, and people see, like, measure it differently than me. So
Mhm.
why am I comparing myself to other people? And and so maybe it's just they're on their path, I'm on mine. How can we interact and help each other? Really, that's where I am in my life. It's like strategic alliances, collaboration, compassion.
Yes.
I'm kind of like fearless in lots of ways, because I've come through lots of things. I have
Mhm.
stress, I get triggered, I have bad days just like everybody else, but I
Yes.
can see myself and say, oh yeah, this too shall pass. I survived other things, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think looking back and listening back to what we're talking, is one thing that many of people perhaps missing, is we are very hard to ourselves, because we want to achieve, we want
mhm.
to make sure that we accomplish what we want. But at the same time, because of the world we're living, where everything is very accessible in front of us, if we don't have control over that, then yes, we will be consumed over time, that we're just constantly comparing ourselves. But at the same time, I think the word that came to mind as I was listening in our conversation is just, you mentioned already, giving ourselves permission that it is okay
Mhm.
where we are, and we have our own journey to take,
Mhm.
and we gonna go wherever we're supposed to go, but just give ourselves compassion, really, and that love and kindness, because in the world we're living, everyone, especially the experts, and it can be really, really dangerous, because we want to achieve something. And when we listen to what they're saying, instead of stepping back and just process what they say and then refer to your values, does that resonate to me?
Mhm.
Okay, if it does, then go ahead. But if it doesn't, it doesn't. Just allow that it doesn't, and it's okay. I think I just felt that,
Mhm.
the compassion with people and love. And I think we are really longing of connectedness.
Yeah.
And this is why, one of the reasons why becoming separate, it's because we constantly comparing ourselves, which is has nothing to do with loving ourselves. It just, we have our differences, and that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And what's you're so right. And what's also true is we do slip back into patterns of sort of self-loathing or I'm not good enough. And
Yes.
the key isn't that we get triggered or we go backwards. The key is that we can notice it. Like noticing is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, I'm noticing I'm feeling this. And oh, I feel disappointed by that. But last time I was disappointed, I checked out for 3 weeks. This time I only checked out for a week. Wow, I've come so far. Like just giving ourselves permission to be where we are, because that's where we
Yeah.
are. It's like the truth shall set you free, but not till it's had its way with you.
Yeah.
If you can't say this, I'm stuck, or I feel this, we can't really work with that if we're not willing to tell the truth to ourselves about where we are. And sometimes we get angry, sometimes we get jealous. It's like I just say, okay, thank you, my little 13-year-old girl who's jealous. I don't need you today. You can sit in the passenger seat. I'm driving. Like, because that's, again, a part of me that kept me safe at some point in my life. I love you. Thank you. Get to the back of the bus. But we have to give the same grace to other people. And
Yes.
that's why I think values are such a tool for us to locate ourselves, because our values connect us, our beliefs divide us. And values are beliefs with a punch. So, like I said, my value of fairness has been a part of me, but my belief about fairness has evolved over time.
Mm.
So, learning to question our belief, what am I believing about this situation? What am I believing about that person that I'm comparing myself? And is that belief I'm holding serving me? Is there a reframe? Can I look
Yeah.
at it differently? And that's how we add, I call it dimensionality or variability to our emotions. Like we
Mm-hmm.
can access more options as opposed to angry, mad, sad, jealous, happy. We can be anxious. We can be tense. We can be slightly frazzled. We can be all sorts of things if we add more options. And so we
Yes.
don't have to get so extremely triggered in situations when we are able to say, what am I believing right now? And is this actually even appropriate for the situation? Nothing bad is happening. I'm just anxious. Okay. What does that mean? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can dive into this on and on and on, and
Yeah.
the time
You can go
is running,
forever. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but I love this conversation because I think it's super super important that we give ourselves the permission to love ourselves and really have that compassion. And I think that's just something that I want to reiterate.
Mm-hmm.
But moving to the next question, Kathleen, this question, something that I always ask our guests because I love it. And I'm a big believer of optimism. Now,
Mm-hmm.
many of our guests actually express it in different ways, and
Mm-hmm.
some of them would use different terms. So instead of asking you where you stand on optimism, if you believe in this approach, what keeps you optimistic? And if there are any rituals or perhaps a routine that you are more than willing to share with us so people watching or listening can explore, try it out. So, but first, what keeps you optimistic?
So I would say I'm a cautious optimist. I really do believe everybody is good. I think that people intend to do good things as I do. However, we have to be discerning on how
Mm,
much great like sort of latitude we give someone. That's why we have to build trust. So I would say I'm a cautious optimist, but I'm also an incurable optimist because I always know things are going to work out. But I'm not ever too um, steadfast or obsessed with what working out means. I'm willing to let things unfold more. I wasn't always like that.
mhm.
So I see myself as more taking a systemic approach to my life and the way I see things. Because
Yeah.
if something triggers me that makes me feel afraid or scared, I look at the bigger picture. I calm myself down and I say, okay, I can do hard things. I've done hard things before. This is just a hard thing. I don't know how it's going to end.
Yeah.
but I always know that I'm going to come out with some new insight, some new learning.
Mm-hmm.
What is the lesson in this?
Yes.
Is what I ask myself. What am I to learn? Do I ask it right away? Maybe not. I might just sometimes just feel sorry for myself for a day or two. So what I would encourage people to do, in order to see that things do shift, I think about the sky and a cloudy day. The sun is still shining behind the clouds,
Mm.
and the clouds will move.
Mm.
And so that's something I picture. Oh, it's a cloudy day. Or I think about a screen door. If you have the glass door closed, you can't get fresh air in. But I imagine when intense emotion hits me, I'm a screen door. I can let it flow through me. I can't block it. You can't block it. You have to allow it to go through you. So be patient with oneself when you're triggered or scared, or feel like it couldn't get worse. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you've survived everything to now, and those just might feel like flighty words, but I really do think of myself. I think of the screen door. I really do think of the clouds, and I say to myself, what's happening right now? Am I catastrophizing it? What is, instead of trying to solve a big problem, what is my very next step? What's one thing small enough to get done, big enough to matter? And then
Mm.
you can find your way out of sort of that fear. So hopefully there's a nugget or an insight in that for people when they're listening.
Definitely. I
Yeah.
think it's what I am hearing is that taking small bite
Yeah.
of insight or action. And I think this is why I'm a big believer. And one of the steps that I encourage people is that if you're too afraid to see the gap where you want to be, just take one tiny bit,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
however small that be, just take that one step. And as you accumulate and do that constantly, then you realize, oh, I can do more. And this is my observation, and this is what really keeps me optimistic. And I'm really curious what your thoughts on this. I think as we grow older, but maybe not mature,
Mm-hmm.
we tend to reduce our curiosity in life,
Mm-hmm.
also not allowing our inner child to play around as well.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, that creativity, that fun, that optimism, the positivity, not naturally kicking in because of these two things. And I intentionally practice that because, well, it reflects, it shows that it makes sense to me to practice that more consciously. And I'm really curious, do you think that these two things are very, very important for many people as well to acknowledge and practice?
Yeah, I think curiosity is the key. Like, I wonder what that's about. And the older I get, I guess older, I would say I'm a bit wiser. I I have more, I'm more curious because I'm more secure in who I am. And it comes
Mm,
down to knowing what my values are.
yes.
And it sort of circles back to that, is like, if I know what my values are, I can be in a room with people who disagree with me. I can be in a situation that scares me because I know who I am, and I know what decisions I'll make, and I know what line I won't cross. And if I choose to cross the line, it comes from a conscious place.
Yeah.
That's all. It's about being conscious. And an interesting thing you said, that I know our time is running out, but interesting thing you said about just take a small step, because I really encourage people to do one thing small enough to get done, big enough to matter. Is like, imagine you're standing on one side of a little creek, right? And you want to get to the other side, and you're scared.
Yeah.
What's going to happen when I go in the water? So you jump and you land in the water. You only make it halfway, but you've made it halfway.
Yeah.
You're not the same person standing on the side of the bank wondering what it's like to jump across. You've taken a small step, and oh, it's only up to my ankles. It's not as bad as I thought it was. So we can make another step. And when
Yes.
people come to me for coaching, they have this like really big goal. I'm like,
Yes.
okay, I don't believe in goals, but okay, have a goal. But it's like, as we work together,
Hmm.
you're going to learn things about yourself and your own possibility, that goal might not matter anymore
Yeah.
because you're only thinking about it from your current level of consciousness. Let's
Hmm.
see what else can show up in order for you to see a bigger possibility or a different possibility. So don't
Yeah.
get locked into that thing. It's more, who am I becoming? And now
Mm.
what's important to me? So that to me is important to share.
Yes, I love that. And oh, I feel like we can have more discussions with a lot of topics just by
Yes, I know.
having right.
Yeah.
And but I'm super sure that while listening to our discussion, I have the feeling that many very, very curious, maybe three things or more. First is that how can they be part of your team, or maybe how they can work with you. I
Mhm.
can sense already by just listening to our conversation the energy that you're sharing with our conversation, really with compassion, and you making me feel us having this safe
Mhm.
conversation. That's a big thing from your values
Mm.
perspective. And the last is any other engagement that may be people so curious. So my question is how they can connect or reach out to you.
Mm. Pretty simple. I'm on LinkedIn. Also, you can email me, Kathleen@massivelyhuman.com, and just tell me you saw this. And we have a really cool podcast called You Are Inevitable.
All
We
right.
just launched series 2, season 2. We're launching a leadership development podcast in about 6 weeks. We're just preparing that now.
Wow. There you
There's lots
go.
of things. So email me and we can get you on our list, and we can have a conversation. So either Kathleen@massivelyhuman.com or info@massivelyhuman or LinkedIn. Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
Mm.
no worries because I'm going to provide or I'm going to put that on the
Oh,
blog and
great.
also on the podcast. And would love to have the information about the podcast too. So people will
Okay.
start to also
You bet.
listen,
You bet.
the new one and the current one. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
thank you so much for this opportunity. And, we've got a lot to process for many people watching and listening right now. I'm sure like me, I'm going to have a lot to process and digest, and hopefully can inspire people as well to take
Yeah.
action, especially the tiny ones. And so, people watching right now and listening right now, thank you. Thank you very much for listening or watching in this episode. Until next time, with yours truly, Cindy Marie, here to empower your life. Thank you once again, Kathleen.
Thank you, Cindy Marie.
Thank you for joining us with our guest, Kathleen Seeley, and for her powerful insights. We hope you found inspiration and practical tips to bring more values based leadership in your life, in your career, in your work, to reflect on and to take action on. Remember, staying true to your core values can lead to greater openness and authenticity. Please share your thoughts with us and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share this episode so that we can reach more people and empower lives. Follow our podcast and leave a review so our show grow as well. Until next time, stay optimistic, keep pushing forward what keeps you motivated, keep exploring and believe in yourself. You've got what it takes to pursue your dreams and make a positive impact. Keep going and be unstoppable.